to Civic Engagement Media. I'm Patrick Gilbert. On July 3rd, 2018, I, along with R. Chris Davis, had the pleasure of visiting with the legend of Lone Star College himself, Mr. W. W. Thorne. Thorne is the founder and first president of what was then North Harris County College. In part one of our conversation, we discussed several topics, including his childhood, his military service during World War II, and the love of his life, Mrs. Iris Thorne, who he married over 76 years ago. Here is part one of our interview. This is Patrick Gilbert, government professor at Lone Star College, Tomball. Today is July 3rd, 2018. I'm interviewing for the first time Mr. W. W. Thorne, who is the founder of Lone Star College. The interview is taking place at his home here in Houston, Texas. Mr. W. W. Thorne served in the field of education for 36 years. His career includes work at the elementary and high schools, as well as being superintendent of Aldine ISD. Perhaps most notable is his role as founder of what is now Lone Star College. There's far more to his story, and that is what brings us here today to his home. Mr. Thorne, thank you for allowing us to interview you today. May I ask you, what does WW stand for?
William Wayne.
William Wayne. Okay. And when and where were you born?
In Houston in 1924.
What part of town?
Well, it was then called Denver Harbor. It was out near where the Southern Pacific Railroad headquarters is on 610 and 59.
So kind of northeast?
Yeah.
Northeast Houston. Okay. What did your parents do for a living?
Well, a lot of things. During the Depression, we moved back to the farm in East Texas for a year. Then came back to Houston. My dad worked for a mission manufacturing company, which later merged and became a part of Cameron Oil. My dad was also a Baptist minister, and he pastored small churches and worked at mission manufacturing company at the same time.
How about your mom?
My mother was primarily a housekeeper, though she taught school before she and Dad married.
And any siblings?
I had one brother who passed away in 1999.
Was he older or younger than you?
He was younger than me, and he was in school business too. He was assistant superintendent at Huntsville Public Schools. When he retired, he became tax assessor collector for the Huntsville, for the county of Walker County, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. So being born in 1924, that meant that you grew up in the Great Depression.
Yes.
Right? So how was that like growing up in the Great Depression?
Well, I was just a little kid at the time, and so I did not appreciate all of the problems that my parents had. But it was a rough time for most families, including ours. My dad did a lot of different things during the Depression in order to support the family. He worked for Continental Iron and Steel for a while, and they had operations in Houston and in Port Arthur. And so we moved back and forth between Houston and Port Arthur several times during the late 20s and early 30s.
So during the time that you were growing up, what did Houston look like then? How different was it when you grew up?
Well, if I remember right, the population was about 250,000. So it was a small town when I was a kid. Not many of the landmarks in downtown Houston that were there in the late 20s and early 30s are still in existence. Most of them have been torn down and other buildings built.
So what did you do for fun?
Pardon?
What did you do for fun as a youngster?
What did I do for fun? I worked at the grocery store. I started working at the grocery store when I was 12. And it wasn't legal to work at that age. It wasn't legal to work, and so I spent most of my time in the back room and sweeping the floors after the store closed.
Okay. So let's talk about you going to school. Did you go to school in Houston?
Yes.
And
graduated from what used to be Jeff Davis before the politically correct people got a hold of it and changed the name.
What year was that you graduated?
I graduated in 1942.
While you were in school, did you participate in sports or any activities?
No, I worked in the grocery store all the spare time.
Okay. What subjects did you especially like when you were in school?
Oh, well, I really liked the history department. That's some good teachers. And then when I went to the University of Houston, my major is history.
So since you liked history and you eventually majored in it, what was your goal when you graduated from high school?
When I graduated from high school, I had no intention of going to college. I went to work for Mission Manufacturing Company and worked about 6 months before I went in the Navy. And I really didn't have any intentions of going to college when I finished high school, but aboard ship, my bunk compartment was directly beneath the officer's wardroom. And while we were eating beans and rice back at the mess hall, the officers were having steaks occasionally. And I'd go up the ladder from my bunk to the battle station and past the wardroom, and I decided that if a couple of years of college made that much difference, I ought to get a college degree also.
Okay. So if we can go back to when you were in high school, so you graduated in 1942, correct? Mm-hmm. So do you remember Pearl Harbor?
Oh, yes.
And what were your thoughts about that, and how did it make you feel?
Well, on the Sunday that Pearl Harbor occurred, a group of us were down at the church practicing for a Christmas program. And so I didn't hear about the attack until late that afternoon. And of course, the attitude of most of the folk were the audacity of a little bitty country like Japan attacking the United States Navy was just unheard of. Japan was the manufacturer of small, cheap toys. They didn't know anything about a Navy, but we learned differently in pretty short order.
So after you graduated, were you drafted into the military, into the Navy?
Well, yes and no. I went down in June, right after I graduated, to join the Navy. Got my physical, got everything done, all except raising my hand and being sworn in. But my family raised so much cane about me joining the Navy. Their attitude was, if when Uncle Sam needs you, he'll call you. You wait till he calls you. And so I did go down and be sworn in. When in January, right after Iris and I married, I got my 1A classification card. And though I was would have been eligible for deferment because of the job I had, I didn't want that. So I went down to the draft board to join the Navy. And the lady at the draft board said, "I'm sorry, you don't have a choice." And I said, "But I don't want to. I'm wanting the Navy." Well, whichever service has a draft, when your number's up, that's where you go. You don't have a choice. Well, that just upset me more than a little bit. she said, if I get a draft for the Navy, I'll call you. Well, the next afternoon when I got in from work, I called the draft board to know if they'd had a draft for the Navy. She said, no, is that you, Thorne? I said, yes, ma'am. I told you I'd call you, and I said, yes, ma'am, I understand. The next afternoon when I got in from work, I called draft board 11. It got so in about a week's time at 5:30 when it's time for me to call, she'd answer the telephone. Draft board 11, is that you again, Thorne? And I'd say, yes, ma'am. Don't have a draft yet. I told you I'd call you. Yes, ma'am. The next day I'd call her again. Finally, after about 2 weeks, I called and she said, be down here at 8 o'clock in the morning. We've got a draft for the Navy. Just tickled me to death. So technically, I was drafted. But as a practical matter, I worked pretty hard to get in the Navy.
Okay. So what did you do in the Navy?
I was a radar operator.
And I understand you served on the USS New Orleans. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So how was that serving on the New Orleans?
Well, I went aboard the New Orleans in April of 1943. The New Orleans was operating with the fleet in the South Pacific around Guadalcanal. And on November the 30th, 1943, the New Orleans was a part of a task group that was engaged by a Jap task force, and the New Orleans got a torpedo in the bow of the ship and blew 150 feet of the bow of the New Orleans was completely blown off. They managed to salvage the ship. She had some temporary repairs done in Sydney, Australia, and then they brought it back to Bremerton, Washington to have a new bow fitted. And I went aboard the New Orleans while it was in Bremerton having a new bow put on. We lost 158 men off of the ship when the bow was blown off. And when the ship went back to sea, we had about 850 boots. They kept just enough of the seasoned men aboard to provide leadership for a group of boots.
How long did you serve in the Navy?
3 years.
So until the end of the war?
Yeah. I was discharged at Camp Wallace January the 3rd, 1946. So I was in almost exactly 3 years.
Any medals or decorations that you received as part of the
Well, I got a bunch of medals, but all of them just say I was there. You know, no special thing. I'll show them to you when you get through. I got them in the study in there.
Okay. What was it like when you came home from the military?
Well, it was good to be home. I went back to work at Bishop Manufacturing Company when I got home. And our first son was born in October after I got home. I worked a year before I started to the university. When I started to the university, I had a wife and a kid. I'd go to school on GI Bill that paid my tuition and fees of $90 a month.
Can we talk about your marriage for just a moment?
Sure.
Where did you meet Mrs. Thorne at?
Well, when we were in junior high school, I started carrying her books home from school when we were in 7th grade.
And what school was?
John Marshall.
John Marshall School.
John Marshall was right across the street from Jeff Davis Oval Equipment on the north side. I grew up on the north side of Houston and lived north side all my life.
Mm-hmm. Is that where she's from also?
Yeah. Well, she's from Louisiana originally. She had just moved to Texas 3 or 4 months before I met her. And her folks are all from Louisiana.
So you met her in junior high, and you married in 1942. Is that correct? Okay. When did you know that she was the one?
Pretty quick. We got engaged on July the 4th, 1942. The families had 4th of July at an uncle's house in East Texas, and had a big barbecue and all that kind of stuff, typical 4th of July. And Iris and I were sitting on a swing at the front porch after we got through eating that evening. And I said, why don't we get married? And that in essence was the proposal. She thought that'd be a good idea too.
So where was the wedding?
The wedding was at the preacher's house on December the 5th, 1942. We became engaged at the 4th of July and got married the next December.
So by that time, you had already enlisted.
No.
No?
I enlisted 6 weeks after we were married.
Okay. All right. So do you and Mrs. Thorne have any children together?
I have 2. I have a son that is a financial advisor with Edward Jones, his office over in Spring Branch, and a daughter that lives up off 242 next to the Montgomery County College.
Any grandchildren, great-grandchildren?
I have 3 grandchildren and 12 great-grandchildren.
So what is the secret to a 75-year marriage?
Just pick the right girl.
That's it.
And learn to say yes, ma'am, with vigor.